Hi, welcome to week 2 of Student Teaching with Riri. This week was a short week, just like last week, because we had 2 snow days. I knew we were going to be off on Monday, but when I got the call that we were going to be off on Tuesday, looking at the calendar right now, I was thoroughly surprised. So we had another short week, and it was still eventful. First things first, we started on Wednesday, and once again, my teacher's telling me to be flexible because today he found out that he's getting a new student for our 10th grade English class, and we already have 25 students or 26. And so here's like a little bit of a background that him and I know at this point. This student that's currently in their 10th grade class, they are not currently getting bullied, but a year ago they were being bullied by another student in the class. And I guess somewhere in the system when they were building the courses, they kind of forgot that these two students cannot be in the same class. And he got like a phone call, he got an email from the school counselor saying this student needs to join your class because this student does not feel comfortable or safe being in the current class that they are. Makes total sense. And my teacher's super like empathetic and sympathetic to the situation. Like, yeah, that's a lot for that student to handle, especially if they don't feel comfortable in the class. At the same time, they all like his class already has 25, 26 students, and it's pretty much full. He was telling me that a few years ago that they always capped English classes at 18 students, and it's now a lot over, obviously. And he was just telling me that 2 English teachers retired, so they never fill those positions. So now the current English teachers at the high school have to have 20 to 25 students in their classes, which is a lot for them to handle. And he feels bad because he wants to give each student the attention that they deserve, especially since he does conferencing, like one-on-ones. And honestly, there's still like now this one student that's joining has to sit at a table alone instead of at a desk. So it's just things like that that bother him, and he knows it's not the student's fault, but he also knows that if this was written in like the student's like I don't think the student has an IEP, but just like written down that the student and the student cannot be together, then that's more of like the system not like just overlooking that and now has to rearrange like the student's schedule, not much of his schedule, but it's a little frustrating for, I feel like, teachers who just have to not automatically say yes, but they kind of do have to say yes, because what can he say? Like, no, the student can't join my class, because that's also a disservice to the students. So it's a lot of he was frustrated, but he was also just trying to be as sympathetic as he could be because he wants the best for the student. But then he also has to think about all the other students in his class, where now they're losing a little bit of one-on-one time, and he has just more to manage. Luckily, in this class, there are 3 adults, so that really helps. But what about for the classrooms that don't have me, or the other adult in the room? Like, it's a lot. So that was a quick thing that I realized that wasn't totally positive, in the school system, that he said that happens a lot. So I mostly focused this week on differentiated learning between the 10th and 11th graders. It's really, really interesting in that there's a part of me that's like, oh yeah, the 10th graders can handle what the 11th graders are discussing and talking about, but I can't always think that way because they're still young, they're a year younger than the 11th graders, and they still need support. And the 11th graders are in an honors class, whereas the 10th graders are in a CP class. So there is different levels of expectations, different like reading and writing abilities, and each group has different styles of learning. and how they retain information. Where, like, for example, the 11th graders, they really thrive on discussion and they participate and they enjoy independent work and they're able to be self-sufficient in that way. Whereas the 10th graders, not that they're not all of those things, but they need a little bit more push. He's currently teaching the same lessons to the 11th and 10th graders right now because they're doing a really awesome 2-3 week linguistics unit on like code switching and taboo words and slang, and it's so much fun. And I digress. I'll get into that later. But he has 11th grade classes first, and then he was asking me, "Do you have any ways?" Which I'm sure he already knew the answer. He just wanted to see what I knew. What do you think we could change for the 10th graders? So some things that I wrote was like, in the 10th grade classroom, he asked like, "What is satire?" And I was thinking, I don't think you need to ask that to the 10th graders, but maybe just define it, or just like not even use the word at all. I don't know if they'd really care what satire was. Yeah, I think one thing that I noticed that was huge was reading and like read alouds. For the 11th graders, it was easier to do popcorn reading. They were a lot more eager. For the 10th graders, they still did popcorn reading, and they did very well. Not that, like, none of them are poor readers. I just think maybe they're shy. They don't really want to. Um, but I noticed that my teacher wants to do more teacher-led reading. Like, for the 11th graders, they went out into groups and read. For the 10th graders, we read as a class. And that makes sense to me because he could stop and ask questions to make sure they're comprehending. Whereas the 11th graders, they went off into groups, read the article, then we came back and then discussed. So that was interesting. And I think for me, I'm going to have a little bit of trouble trying to differentiate the learning because I don't want to think or believe that the 10th graders can't handle what the 11th graders are doing and how they're doing it. Because I don't want to dumb them down. I don't want to feel like they can't do it. But I think maybe that's not the most productive mindset. Maybe it's just they are younger. And maybe they don't enjoy reading that much, and maybe they do need more guidance instead of looking at it as they can't do it. But there are other ways that different types of students learn. So that's something I think I just need to continue being exposed to and think of positive ways and like positive ways to differentiate that learning and stuff. Cool. So to continue, I did want to talk about what we're doing in class. We're doing right now. He's teaching a linguistics kind of language learning lesson unit on like taboo words, slang words, oh my gosh, code switching. Like, he wants to do that because that's the language that they know the most and they interact with the most. Meaning, it's, literature is a different world. It's a different type of language, grammar and English, and it's very proper in that way. And then whereas slang and everyday language is what they're used to, and that's something they own and something that's part of their identity. So he wants to kind of bring that out first before we get into like a formal book that we're reading. So with that, they're reading their own independent book. We're talking about slang words and they're writing their own, and it's really fun, and it kind of just opens them up a lot more. And they feel more comfortable and confident and I think capable because they're starting with something that they're familiar with instead of going straight into The Kite Runner, which is a very intense book in itself. So I did really notice for all grades, like in all classrooms, just how much fun they had making their like word clouds that they're doing for slang. And I know next week we're doing taboo words, so I'm sure they're gonna have fun like hearing curse words from like my teacher. And I'm still in awe and like how intelligent all these students are in like discussing real world issues or events or pop culture things. Like, they're so aware of what's happening around them, and it's very, very cool. Okay, so I visited a classroom because this one teacher was starting the kite runner now, whereas I'm starting it on February 19th, so I have a couple weeks. And I wanted to see what her first like opening activity, open lesson was, and they had a bunch of quotes, and you had to disagree or agree. And all these quotes and like sentences were very related to the book, but the students didn't know that yet. One of them was like, should you live up to your parents' expectations? Or is love does unconditional love cost anything? Or things about like, is it okay to stay silent about certain situations and things like that? Which if you've read The Kite Runner is so relevant. But they didn't know that. But one of the questions, which is so funny to me, how the way the students answered it, because they were debating. It was a class of like 20 students, maybe. One of the questions was like, if you saw your friend being bullied, would you step in? And the direction these conversations went was so funny and like ridiculous in a lot of ways. My teacher that I was observing, she made ground rules like I wrote it down. Be respectful, no name calling, be kind, no overly general statements. Okay, so in one of the questions, which was, would you step in if your friend was getting bullied or if your friend was in a harmful situation or something along those lines? So it was honestly split 50-50 between the two groups. And one student on the disagree side looked at all the students on the agree side and was like, I know none of you would stand in front of your friend if they were about to get shot. And everyone's just like, including me and the teacher, we were like, what? First of all, that's such an extreme example. Secondly, well, he kept going and he was saying, like, I know you guys are all over there because you want to feed your ego. And everyone was like, holy crap. Dude, first of all, relax. And the teacher was like, listen, you can't just judge everyone's character off of one, an extreme example, two, hypothetical. It was just really funny the way that these students, they talked about real world situations. They talked about historical events. They were very deliberate and they were thoughtful about their answers. Sometimes they were funny and a little silly, but overall, like, a lot of different students were like speaking up and they felt comfortable to talk about these situations without it going totally off the rails. Sometimes it did, but my teacher does a really good job of the teacher I was observing does a really good job of redirecting the conversation and, giving a look or just laughing about something that they said, but also being stern, like, you can't say that. That's not kind, or that's an overly general statement. Why don't you reword it? And made sure that everyone had a chance to speak. So, definitely going to be using that for my first lesson. So that was really fabulous to just see that because I'm really nervous about my first few lessons and just crafting my first ever unit plan because I don't know what to focus on quite yet, but this is a good place to start and just kind of go for it. But I really appreciate going to her classroom for the period. Student teaching Q&A time. I did ask my teacher what I should do about kids that are distracted in class, because I noticed like these two students in the 10th grade classroom were like poking each other with pencils, and I don't really know what to do. Like, I could step in and be like, yo, like, pay attention, or just hang around them, or I didn't know because I didn't want to disrupt my teacher's flow, right? Like, he's teaching, he's talking, I don't want to, like, I don't know, be distracting and adding to the distraction. But he just said, like, yeah, proximity for now is really good, just standing around them. Also, redirecting maybe in a quiet way, like tapping on their desk or just being like, hey, say something really important. I think I'm gonna try to do that more if it's popping up next week. I want them to like me, and that's where I am right now. Like, I'm gonna be teaching them in a few weeks, and I want them to feel like they can, respect me and talk to me, and I guess that includes me telling them, like, yo, you need to stop poking him with the pencil and just keep your hands to yourself. Here's a quote of the week that my teacher said that I really, really loved, that kind of got me thinking about how reading and like books are taught in school. He said this at parent teacher night. It's not what you read, it's that you read. And I feel like that's such a great way to think about doing anything, but specifically reading. Like, it's not about what you read. It's not that you've read, I don't know, As I Lay Dying. I'm looking at my books right now. It's not like The Hobbit or Kurt Vonnegut or Uncle Tom's Cabin or Frankenstein or Huckleberry Finn. It's not that. It's not about what you've read, but it's the fact that you're reading that is such a great redirection, and kind of um not forcing students to read, but it's the fact that, like, it's great that you're reading, and that's what we should focus on. It doesn't matter if you're reading a sports magazine, it doesn't matter if you're reading a graphic novel, or it doesn't even matter what you're reading. It's the fact that you're using your muscles, you're learning how to, like, sit and pay attention to something for 20 minutes. It's that you're absorbing knowledge in, like, a slower way, and you're finding something that, lets you escape, and just, fall into a new world that matters more. It's about everything else other than the fact about what you're reading. And I think that's such a beautiful way to put it, and it allows for growth, because if we just focus on what our students reading, why would our students even care about what they're reading in the first place? It's more valuable, which is why he started with, like, them picking out their independent books, because it's something that they're interested in, and that, that one book that they picked out just now could spark them to become readers and really love reading and find a whole series that they fall in love with. So I think, with that being said, I think that's a really great place to end. And week 2 was very great. I hope I have a full week next week, which I think I will. Yeah, I'll let you know how it goes. And thanks for watching. I will see you next week.